Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very, very happy to welcome Will Wilkerson here. Now, he is a podcast host of a show called DERATE the Hate. And we're going to get to learn about his show. But before that, tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, Kyle. So I am, as you said, Wilk Wilkinson. I'm the host of the DERATE the Hate podcast. I am somebody who is just out there trying to better the world one attitude at a time. And so that's why I started the DERATE the Hate podcast, the 3.5 years ago. I saw so much toxicity out there, so much online hate, and wanted to see if there was something I could do about that. So put together the show, and been doing it ever since, and do a lot of work in the depolarization space, trying to mend the chasms, mend the tears in the fabric of this nation, and spend a lot of my time doing it, and it's been quite a ride.
I read a little bit of your biography, and we had, I guess, sort of a similarity in growing up. I mean, we weren't dirt poor, but we weren't rich either. But our parents made sure that we had everything that we needed. Maybe not everything we wanted, but everything we needed. Tell me a little bit more about your childhood.
So growing up in the late 70s, early 80s in the Midwest, just like a lot of people did, there maybe wasn't always a lot of work, or a lot of good paying work, and so I had two parents that worked hard when they could. Mom worked in a clothing factory, sewing, a lot of a lot of hot long hours there, and Dad was either doing construction or driving truck, mostly manual, blue collar work, and a lot of hours and not a lot of good pay. So us kids did the best we could, but there wasn't a lot of frills. There wasn't really no going out to eat a lot of times, and a lot of people can't relate to this kind of thing now, Kyle, but we didn't have a phone at home, let alone one in our pocket. Didn't have a phone at home, didn't have cable, no DVD player or streaming service, and most times if we had any television at all, it was just the three main channels that you got with an antenna. So it's a different life to think about it now, because the poorest among us now really don't understand what that kind of life was like back then, and then even back then, obviously in the 70s and 80s, life was certainly not the same as it was for the previous generations in the 30s and the 40s. So it's kind of funny to think about that in that respect, but what it did for me was, as I got older and started to realize the things that the things that my parents did, and the things that they sacrificed, and the hard work that they did for the little that we did have, it started to give me an attitude of gratitude, and taught me the importance of, taught me about what is important and what's not important, and what we need to be thankful for in life, and just gratitude, and having the right kind of attitude. But there was also a different dynamic to that too, Kyle, and that's that there was a lot of resentment there too, that I had to get past as an individual, that I had to get past personally, because the things that I saw, and the envy that I saw for things that other people had that I didn't have, and the anger that built up inside of me, and whatever. So while I didn't have a lot of the things that the other kids had, and the life that a lot of other people had, I certainly got a lot of material to learn lessons later in life.
I think I started mowing yards when I was around 7 or 8 years old, and there were certain toys that I wanted, so I had to mow the yards in order to get those toys. But it also taught me a lesson about working and earning my own money, and I kept it up. About the time I turned 12, I was able to start helping my dad. He started his own business in air conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And every summer I was doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, you worked for what you wanted, but I see too many people nowadays that just feel like everything should be handed to them. But I think that's our fault. I
Oh,
think
that's right.
we wanted to give them everything that we didn't have, but we should have gave them some of the stuff we did have.
Mm-hmm. No, that's right. Talking about our similar stories, it's, when I must have been, I think I was, I'm, I'm thinking back, but 7, 8, 9 years old. I wanted, um, I wanted a leather jacket like Michael Jackson, is what I wanted for whatever reason. And, and then my dad said, okay, well, we're going to get all these little baby chickens and we're going to raise these baby chickens. And for each chicken that's still alive at the end of the summer, when it comes time to butcher, um, we'll give you I don't even remember. I'll just say for argument's sake, or just for story's sake, a quarter, right? And at the end of the summer, when it came time to butcher, we had this many chickens left. I was able to get this amount of money for raising those chickens and keeping them going all throughout that life cycle. And when I had my money, I said to my dad, I said, okay, well, now, just like a lot of kids do, right? Now that I spent all this time working for this money, my mind has changed. I don't want the leather jacket anymore. I want this baseball glove instead. Can I get this? And he's like, it's your money. You work for it. You get to choose. That's one of the beautiful things about working for your money. You get to choose what you're going to do with that money. So then I bought my baseball glove, which meant more to me than that jacket. And obviously I got a lot more use out of it. And still a horrible baseball player and never could dance like Michael Jackson. But um, the thing about it was I learned that lesson, and then it was a couple years later and I was mowing yards too and doing stuff like that. And I was always hustling like that, trying to make some money, because I learned if I put in the effort, if I put in the work, I'm going to be able to get something that I want that my parents probably can't give me on their own. And then, when I was 10 years old, I said, Dad, I want a motorcycle. He's like, well, you're going to have to buy one, get a job. And I didn't get a job. I got 3. And I started delivering the paper. I delivered the Sioux City Journal every day of the week. I delivered the Golden Shopper I think it was Tuesday afternoons. And then every day, Monday through Friday, I was cleaning the lobby and the lint filters at the local dry cleaner. And it wasn't very long later, I had enough money to buy a motorcycle. And I bought my first motorcycle when I was 10 years old, something that my folks could have never even imagined giving me, and so bought a motorcycle when I was 10 years old. And this is how my life kept on progressing. As I wanted stuff, I worked harder for stuff, and never had the nicest stuff, never had the great car that the other kids in high school maybe drove, but I was probably one of the only ones that bought my own with my own money. And yeah, man, that's the story of my life. That's the way that things went. And the material things, when I think back on all that time, Kyle, and think back on the things that I did there, the material things that were acquired through that process was not the valuable thing that was acquired through that process. The value was really in the lesson. The value was in actually understanding what that all meant. And there are way too many people, as you said, way too many people in society today that don't understand that and they weren't afforded those lessons because they were afforded things that they maybe shouldn't have been.
Exactly. I noticed that you talked about making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. Now, myself, I became an alcoholic and a drug addict. Finally got myself clean, nearly destroyed my relationship with my kids because all they saw was a drunk dad all the time.
Yeah. So I've I've made more mistakes than my share. You know, I think the biggest thing for me was was yeah, whether it be relationships or friendships or stuff like that. Like I said, I had a lot of resentment, a lot of anger from just, you know, the things that I did experience growing up, and in doing so, very, you know, very awkward. I mean, I was bullied a lot as a kid, you know, both for being poor and also being awkward, you know. So that made me even more angry and more awkward in many respects when it came to a lot of different things. And then I also spent while the other kids were playing and doing sports and having friends and things like that, I spent a lot of my time working. So relationships always for me, whether it be friendships or actual intimate relationships with you know, with girlfriends and stuff throughout my early adult life, was never was never very good at that. So and then yeah, just blowing up you know, just an explosive temper, breaking a lot of things, whether, you know, whether it be getting in fights with people, and some of those alcohol induced. I you know, I'm still somebody who enjoys drinking beer, but I don't drink nearly like I used to. Never did get into drugs, never appealed to me, never liked it, thank God, because I do have kind of an addictive personality that I battle every day. It's one of my vices. Fortunately, I don't have the same kind of affliction to it or with it that other people have. So my biggest thing was always my temper. It literally was my temper. And, you know, somebody would make me mad, and I wouldn't, you know, I'd either hit them or I'd hit something else, and it led to a lot of broken bones, a lot of stitches, a lot of buying stuff over and over and over again. You know, and so as I think about a lot of those things and friendships, I mean, I've had, I've been honored to have some of the greatest, you know, friendships and be able to spend time with some truly great people over the course of my life. And a lot of those people, you know, never, you know, I don't hear from anymore, you know, and it's probably because I said or did something or whatever over the course of that time, and you know, they finally just got fed up and said, you know what, I don't want to be around a guy like this, you know. I don't want to be around a guy that's gonna, you know, go to the bar, make an ass out of himself, maybe get in a fight, you know, maybe end up, you know, breaking something, punching somebody, you know, things like that. So that a lot of my problems, a lot of my mistakes stemmed from my inability to control my emotions, which is why one of the biggest things I talk about today, Kyle, is not allowing our emotions to dictate our actions. Because very often, if we allow our emotions to dictate our actions, which I used to do quite often, we do the wrong thing. And that can be applied to almost anything in our life, not just relationships and but you know, money. If we allow ourselves to act on our emotion, I want that, I need that. Oh, well, do you need that? Is it? I mean, are you going to make it through tomorrow without it? Well, yeah, but I really want that. So if we allow that emotion, you know, to do that, then all of a sudden, well, damn it, now I can't pay I can't pay the rent, can't pay the mortgage, I can't, you know, or you know, so many other things. Anger. If we allow our anger to dictate our emotions, you know, oh, this person made me so mad, and I'm gonna punch a hole in the wall. Now all of a sudden I got a broken hand and I got to fix the wall. You know, it's it's yeah. So that's most of my mistakes centered around a lot of animosity, a lot of anger, and then the inability to keep my emotions from dictating my actions, which yeah, like I said, that's one of the biggest lessons I try to bring to everybody now.
Well, we talked before we started the show, and one thing I really appreciate about the conversation is the fact that you're trying to to bring some positivity into the world and trying to stop all this hate. It seems like there's been a line drawn that you've got, people that have their beliefs on this side, people have their beliefs on their side, and that there's no coming together. But you're trying to break that. Talk about what you do in your show.
Yeah, so with the DERATE the Hate podcast, and this isn't what it was originally, but what it's kind of morphed into, right? It's kind of evolved into in a lot of ways work in the depolarization space.
Mm-hmm.
Because polarization in my mind is one of the most dire issues of our time. Everybody one of the most overused phrases we see out there right now is existential threat, right? This is an existential threat. That's an existential threat. Well, I don't see most of those things as true existential threats. I do see polarization as an existential threat, because if we aren't having the conversation, if we aren't talking to each other, no other problem will get solved. My friend John Wood Jr. from Braver Angels says polarization is the one problem that ensures that all other problems will not be solved. And it is impossible for us as a human race, as people, to get beyond our common problems if we cannot have the conversation. Right. So polarization has become one of the projects that I spend so much time on, Kyle, and whether that polarization is based on race, if that polarization is based on the haves and the have-nots, if the polarization is based on Republicans and Democrats, or gays and straights, or whatever. I don't care what box you try to put some group into. There is a person out there, or there is a group or an organization out there that somehow will find a way to try and keep us divided. And it is up to us as individuals. It is up to, I talk a lot about personal accountability, personal responsibility. It is each one of our individual responsibilities to not allow ourselves to be placed in a box, because those boxes are meant to divide. I mean, you think about a shipping warehouse, right? You think about product and freight, and I've been in transportation forever. We put things in boxes so that it goes the right place, right? We put things in boxes to keep them divided. We separate stuff. People put us in boxes and put labels on those boxes to keep us separated, and then they can be taken down when it's time to pander to those in that box. Don't allow yourself to be put in a box. We're all human beings. We all have our blind spots. We all have different things that we think about, different things that we don't know, different ways that we want to live. But none of us are not worth talking to in some way, shape, or form. So we have to, if we expect to get through this, time we have together on this rock and do great things together, we have to be able to have the conversation.
And you have people on your show that don't necessarily agree with you, right?
All the time. Yeah, I I mentioned the group Braver Angels here a bit ago, and it's one of the organizations that I do the most work now with, and they're all about bringing people together of differing mindsets, right? And having the conversation, having curious conversations, and getting to know people and trying to find common ground with those of differing mindsets than our own. And yeah, on my podcast, I mean, I've had people from all across the mindset spectrum, let's just say, on my podcast, having conversations with people who, I may not agree with them at all politically, or they may see things from a racialized perspective far different than I would. But it doesn't mean we can't have an incredible conversation, because it really comes down to seeing the humanity in all people, and understanding that, again, we can be different, but that doesn't mean we have to dislike or hate each other, or believe that that person has some kind of ill intent, or that person is evil, or whatever. You know, people got to get past this idea that just because that somebody thinks differently than they do, that they are some kind of evil, or some kind of scourge on this earth. You know, they may be wrong, but wrong does not equate to evil. And a lot of people have forgotten that.
You think deep down inside that they really think the same way you do, but for some reason there's something getting them to that point?
So this is one thing when it comes to you know, I guess you know, effective polarization and things like that is believing that somebody couldn't possibly believe what they believe. So when we see somebody, like, you take the political divide, right? And you know, you've got Republicans who think one way and Democrats who think another, liberal, progressive, you know, conservative, Republican, whatever, however you want to label those different sides of the political spectrum. And they often think that, okay, this person can't possibly believe what they claim to believe. You know, they're obviously trying to blow smoke for some reason, so they got to have an ulterior motive. They couldn't possibly believe what they believe. And I think that's another thing that, I mean, we do ourselves a huge disservice, because, you know, we think, okay, well, maybe what they're saying is they couldn't possibly believe it. There's no way that they could believe that. So they got to have this ill intent. So now we all of a sudden label their motives. You know, we now ascribe motives to what they're saying, because what they're saying couldn't possibly be true, because if I'm a rational human being and I don't believe that, they're now an irrational human being with ulterior motives. And that is it is an ugly cycle that we allow ourselves to get into, because what that does is it perpetuates that polarization. It further tears the fabric that should be holding us together. So instead of somebody being wrong, they now have an ulterior motive, and, you know, well, they just couldn't possibly believe what they're saying they believe.
I just think that when you're born, you naturally want to get along with people, but through the years, something or someone has taught you not to get along with others.
Right, right. Well, and it's something that I talk about quite often, Kyle, and it's unfortunate, but there is, and, you know, I was this may sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but, you know, there is, and this goes to ascribing motives. There is a certain amount of our population, a certain segment of our population, that does have a vested interest in keeping us divided. Division sells, right? Ugliness sells. There's a reason that the most toxic voices have the biggest followings online. You know, there's a reason that the media will show all the ugly in our world, as opposed to all the puppy dogs and flowery field stories, right? It's there's a reason why the most toxic politicians that we have within our government get all the airplay. I mean, that division sells, toxicity sells. It's ugly. But going back to the whole thing of this tribalism being a learned behavior, it absolutely is. You know, and I just recently had a conversation with a great guy that I met at the Braver Angels National Convention back in July. And he wrote a book called Political Tribalism in America and How Hyperpartisanship Dumbs Down Democracy and How We Can Fix It. And he talks in that book a lot about the tribal theory of democracy versus the folk theory of democracy, and how those two relate to kind of what you're saying. Because is it a learned behavior? Did our party make us believe what we believe, or did we join that party because our beliefs align with theirs? and it's kind of a weird cycle question. But when you think about it, it really makes a lot of sense, right? Do I believe what I believe because the Republican Party told me to believe that, which is one way of thinking, or do I align with the Republican Party because my beliefs align with most people within the Republican platform? And it's something that we have to ask ourselves. But then you also have to ask yourself, okay, do I have to walk in lockstep? I don't like lockstep thinking. I've never liked lockstep thinking, Kyle. Lockstep thinking, I think, is one of the most toxic things, and it's one of the most things that polarizes us most. And it's why I find myself, or have for the majority of my adult life, found myself within the side of the political spectrum that I'm on, because I never saw that as a lockstep mentality kind of party. I did see that as the other side, though. But when I think about lockstep thinking and you being forced to believe everything on this side, that is that tribal theory of democracy, right? If you don't believe everything that we say, you're not allowed in our club. We're going to kick you out. We're going to shun you. We're going to put you out. And then that further divides us as a nation. It further divides us as a nation, and it doesn't allow us to get anything done.
Exactly.
And one thing I want to make sure that everybody understands about, polarization and depolarization work and things like that. We're not talking about milquetoast middle, and we're not talking about kumbaya, everybody gets along. And comes to some, like I said, milquetoast middle. It's about truly having conversations and not having to believe everything the other person believes, but seeing the humanity in them and being able to have that conversation, not to change their mind, but to actually get to know them as a human being and figure out why they believe what they believe. Once you do that, and you can walk away still as friends after that and not have to believe what they believe, but understand the humanity in their position, life becomes so much better. Like I said, it drives that wedge, right? It drives that polarization. It further tears the fabric of this nation when you tell somebody, hey, like I said, if you don't believe believe everything that we believe in, you're not going to be part of our club anymore. we're not going to allow you in. And that is not the way to get things done. And taking it even back, like I said, we can back that right out of politics. It doesn't have to be, because one of the biggest problems that I see in society today, Kyle, is people have taken their political identity and made it part of their core identity. I prefer, going back in my mind, even though other parts of my life weren't so great, I prefer going back in my mind to the days when every conversation didn't have to be about politics.
Right.
In fact, most conversations weren't about politics. They had nothing to do with politics. They had to do with everyday life. I've never been, and I was having a conversation with somebody that I do a lot of work with the other day, and we were making jokes because I'm not a pop culture guy. I'm not. You and I talked in the pre-show about, I don't watch television. I think there's too much it's just not my thing. I'm not a pop culture guy. I'm just so when it comes to pop culture, I need like an advisor when it comes to pop culture, because somebody will mention something about somebody. Did you hear the latest about so and so? I'm like, not only did I not hear the latest about so and so, I don't even know who so and so is. But I'm just a people person. I like to live. I like to have conversations with people, and it does not have to be about politics. It doesn't. I mean, sometimes it's just literally, how was your day? What's going on with you? What did you do this weekend? How's that thing going with your kids? It doesn't have to be your conversations don't have to be about politics. Your conversations don't have to be about gossip and this. That's all smarmy stuff. I just like the relationship. I like to interact with people, but I it's one of these things that if we allow ourselves to be pigeonholed into um into these boxes. I go back to these boxes. If we allow ourselves to be pigeonholed and forced into lockstep thinking, or forced into you have to do things my way or you're outside of our club now, that kind of thing, we lose out on so much. We lose the opportunity to see the good in all people. We talked earlier about race and racism and the work that my friend does with Dr. Sheena Mason with the theory of racelessness, and how people have been pigeonholed into these racialized mentalities, and how we've allowed that again to separate us in so many ways. And when it comes to race and racialization and different constructs like that, it's a learned mentality. It's a perpetuation of ignorance that develops a hatred among people who have no business hating each other, because it makes no sense. It's a construct that makes no sense. And when we allow people to pigeonhole us into a certain mentality, it further divides us. That further division ends up creating an increased amount of ignorance of the other people. As that ignorance of those other people, and I say other because it's them, it's over there, those people, our ignorance of those people end up further, that ignorance creates fear, that fear creates anger, that anger creates violence. It's a horrible cycle that is perpetuated by people who have a vested interest in keeping us divided. So it sounds like I'm talking in circles. I might be talking in circles, but the reality is this: if we're not having the conversation, if we're not trying to get to know people for who they are, despite whether they think differently than we do, we will always have increased hatred. If we want to truly derate the hate, if we want to tame down the toxicity that we find ourselves constantly battling in society today, we have to have those conversations. We have to talk to people. We can't just talk to people who think like us. We can't just talk to people who look like us. We can't just talk to people who believe like us. It literally, we have to be able to have the conversation with everybody. And once we have the conversation with everybody, we'll actually start to get some things done and effectively spend the time we have together on this rock.
Exactly. Man, this has been a great conversation. I think we could probably have this go on for a couple of hours, but unfortunately, we have come to the end. So before we go, do you have a website?
I do. I've actually I've got a couple, but the one that I'd like people to check out is DERATETHEHATE.com. That is the podcast website. It's where you can find the most information about me. You can find the other stuff at Wilkes World too. But yeah, DERATETHEHATE.com is the podcast, and that is where I would like people to check it out. There's a lot of great tools, a lot of great interviews, and a lot of great people on that website.
What was the other website that you mentioned a while ago that you helped them out?
Oh, Braver Angels, braverangels.org. Yeah, Braver Angels is an organization, and there is an unbelievable amount of resources when it comes to depolarization there as well. That is definitely an organization that all people should try to get involved in. People who have a true true interest in mending the fabric of our nation.
And what about your social media?
You can find me on pretty much anywhere. Go to Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. You can find, I don't know what my handle is, probably DERATE the Hate. Just check out DERATE the Hate. Look at DERATE the Hate on any social media platform. You'll find me on there. And then obviously anywhere you get your podcast, you can find, just type in DERATE the Hate. And you'll find me. And on Facebook also, finding me as an individual, you'd find, just look up Wilkinson and you'll find me.
I'll make it easy for everyone. I will put the links in the description.
That is beautiful.
You know, I miss the days when I was younger, when we seemed to avoid topics like politics or religion. And now it's taken over every conversation, it seems.
It is. It has. It has. But maybe there'll be a day when that isn't the topic of all the topic of all discussions again. We just keep on working towards that, Kyle.
Oh, that's what we're here for, man. We're going to make it happen. But again, thank you so much for being on the show. I really, really appreciate it. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, well, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. And for my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. And until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network